It's now my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Charles Bolden, who served as NASA Administrator from 2009 until 2017. He oversaw the transition from the Space Shuttle system to a new era of exploration focused on the International Space Station and new developments in aeronautics. Another X-plane, yes. He also oversaw the shift toward commercial space initiatives, handling ISS resupply, and created the Space Technology Mission Directorate. His tenure included the triumph of the Mars Curiosity rover landing. During his 34-year career with the Marine Corps, he worked in NASA's astronaut office, during which he went into orbit 4 times and logged over 680 hours in space, including on the mission that deployed the Hubble Space Telescope. Please again check out his additional biographical information that is available in your program. So now all please join me in welcoming Charlie.
Thanks very much. My part in the play here is hopefully to tell you how we're going to Mars. I don't have a clue. However, there's a guy sitting over here in the first, second, third row, fourth row by the name of Admiral Jim Ellis. Jim, raise your hand if you would. See him in the reception because he chairs the users group of the National Space Council. So he really does know what NASA's trying to do today, whereas I've been gone for 2 years. So I'm going to tell you what happened while I was there and what I'm able to find out is going on today. So I picked this to start out since we're talking about the moon. Hopefully everybody knows what that little orb going around Earth is. That is the moon. And what's important and exciting about it is it's an image of our moon. It's a 28-day loop, and what you're seeing is something that we've never seen before because it's the backside of the moon taken by the Discover satellite that's about 1.5 million kilometers away from Earth, and we use it to get meteorological data. We use it to get all kinds of information from that vantage point out in space. Why is the backside of the moon important? Well, it's important because there's a lot of stuff. I use this term a lot. It's a scientific term that I learned while I was at the Naval Academy, a place where Tom and I studied. We have a lot of things in common. We both learned a lot of stuff at the Naval Academy. We also learned how to make a graph with one data point. So, and Secretary England, who's down here, who at the time that I'm just pointing out people who had an impact on my life. You probably don't remember this. I was on the golf course one day, and I got a call from Secretary England. And he said, Charlie, this is Secretary Gordon England. I said, oh, sir, I know who you are. He said, I've got a question to ask you. He said, I understand that the Commandant of the Marine Corps and the NASA Administrator have decided that you should go to NASA to be the Deputy Administrator. He said, I want to be blunt. Do you want to do that? I said, I'm a Marine. I go wherever you tell me to go. And he said, that's not the question I asked. And I said, well, I never did answer the question, I don't think. But I said, well, Mr. Secretary, I have the best job there is, one of the best jobs there is in the Marine Corps right now. I'm commanding the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing, and I've got 18,000 Marines who I know and love. And if truth be told, I'd much rather stay here with them. And he said, I just wanted to check. I got called back to Washington to at least interview for the job anyway. And I think the night before my confirmation hearing, all of a sudden everything blew up. And I went back out to Miramar, California and resumed my job. So I'm not sure whether Secretary of England had anything to do with everything blowing up. But it was one of the best things that ever happened to me was having an opportunity to finish out my tour with 3rd MAR and finish up my tour with the Marine Corps. So a lot of people in here who I owe a lot. Jean-Jacques Dordain, who was, what do you call it, inducted this morning, is a dear friend. He is the Dean of space flight, in my estimation. He is the Dean of agency heads for every agency in the world. He taught me a lot when I came in to be the NASA Administrator. He was already serving as the director of the European Space Agency, the Director General. And he and I kind of went through most of the 8 years of the Obama administration together. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about the kind of things that he and I did, along with as Tom says, you give credit to the people that do the work. And so Jean-Jacques and I had an opportunity to work with 20 some odd other nations and trying to get to where we are today, talking about going to Mars. I want you to just take a quick glimpse at this. This is the way most people who go to space see Earth today. We don't have anybody who's seen Earth from that vantage point like Tom did in the Apollo era. So this is a space person's vantage point of Earth. But it's good enough to let you know, here's just a lesson that has nothing to do with engineering, it's human nature. There are no borders and boundaries down there. You can't tell where one group of people lives and another group of people lives, and even if you try. And that's a lesson that I try to tell kids all the time. It also gives you a good glimpse of our tiny little atmosphere, that thin blue line between the blackness of space for that 45 minutes that you're in daylight, and then the 45 minutes that you're in darkness. And it's important for us all to realize that that's really, really, really not a lot. And so for everybody in here, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but we've got to convince other people we really need to take care of that. Contrary to Elon Musk is a good friend. I'm not like Elon. I'm not looking for another place to live. There is no planet B. Okay? There is no plan B. When we need to leave Earth, it means everything's on its way out. So we need to learn how to take care of this one, so we don't need to be dreaming of other places that we can go live. So I will leave that message. Tom and I have a lot of things in common and a lot of things different, but a couple of them. We both flew about 500 hours in space, which to some of you who have never been in space, that may sound like a lot. That's a camping trip. I really want you to understand, 500 days in space over his number of flights and my 4 flights. For me, my longest mission was 9 days. That is a camping trip. You can gut it out for that long. You cannot gut out 6 months on orbit. And that's what people do today. We live and work in space, and for those of you who have kids or grandkids or anybody who's 19 years or younger, they have not taken a single breath when we've not had people living and working on the International Space Station about 250 miles above Earth. They're working and living. They are not camping. And so there's a dramatic difference between the astronauts of today and the astronauts of Tom and my era, for very good reason. You're seeing a lot of young doctors, engineers, scientists, people that we eschewed back in the old days of the space program. But there are people that are going to really get us to Mars. For those of you who don't follow the space program, I think we've finished now, but Christina Koch and Drew Morgan did the first of 5 EVAs, 5 spacewalks that are scheduled for this month alone. That's a lot. And that's about 8 hours each time. And if everything goes well, on the 21st of this month, we will finally have a spacewalk where we'll have Christina Koch and Jessica Meir, 2 women for the first time doing a spacewalk. Hold on. I keep my fingers crossed. I just told you that so you can pay attention, but you never know what's going to happen. We were here before, and we learned that our planning wasn't all that red hot when you didn't have 2 suits for 2 women. So, the minor problem. So, there are a number of things that we believe we need if we're going to really take humans to Mars. And it means we cannot leave any of the 51% of the planet behind. And I think the women here know what I'm talking about. So we've got about 51% of the people on the planet that we've got to use. And we've got to let them lead and do other things. And so NASA, while we don't get it right all the time, I think we're making a great effort at doing that. And I want you to take a look at where they are today. And you can turn the music up if you'd like. Some people go on a dance in the aisle. Christina Koch, who did her spacewalk today, and will live on station for another half year. She'll be there for a year when she comes home. So that's different than Apollo. And when I say we're going to Mars, and we're going to do it in most of our lifetime, I really think we're on the threshold of getting there. We're going to be able to do it because we're hopefully going to use the whole planet in people. And we're not going to eliminate sectors of the population from making that effort. That's home for a lot of people today. We have 20 some odd nations who collaborate to make life possible on the International Space Station. Like I said, it's been there more than 19 years now. This past week, we had 9 crew members on board. We went down to a normal 6-person crew a few days ago, and that's the place we're going to continue to occupy for the next, 4 to 8 years. And then we need to get off this, and we need to deorbit it and bring it home, because we need to have smaller, commercially operated places where you can do some of the experimentation that you teach kids to do if you're a professor, or if you happen to be a research engineer or a research scientist, places where you can do your research, whether it's biomedical engineering or pharmaceuticals development or materials processing or whatever it happens to be. This is some of what's going on station today for those of you who don't live and breathe space stuff like I do. This has been a game changer, this exercise apparatus. Astronauts go to space today, and they can come back after a year, and they're in pretty good shape. That wasn't always the case. Saw the circle of flags. We added a new flag this past week, when the UAE had their first astronaut go to the International Space Station, stay for a few days, and then come back home. So we're adding more and more nations as we go along. And I firmly believe one of the things that's really going to help us get to Mars is going to be the international collaboration that's going on now. We made a dramatic change. Actually, we were following the direction from the young Bush administration way back from 2003. After we lost the Columbia orbiter, we had the Columbia Accident Investigation Board, and they said, look, here's guidance we think NASA should adapt. We should retire the shuttle, say, by 2010 or 2011, and we should use the benefits of American and international industry to get things and people back and forth to space. And so when we came in as part of the Obama administration, we said, okay, like it or not, it's probably time to do that. If we really want to explore, the space shuttle is not a vehicle that's going to get us anywhere other than low Earth orbit. So we need to be able to move on to exploration vehicles, and we need to have somebody who can stay behind in low Earth orbit and take that over, because it's an absolute essential to have a low Earth orbit infrastructure from which you can migrate out to lunar orbit and then eventually on out to Mars. So that was the plan. So what we started doing was partnering with industry. This used to be Orbital Sciences. David Thompson started a company called Orbital Sciences. They purchased ATK, which used to be Alliant ATK. They were subsequently bought by Northrop Grumman. So this is the Cygnus spacecraft. I love the way that David and his crew started out, because they are an American company that launched Cygnus, produced by the Italians, on a Ukrainian rocket powered by Russian engines. So go figure that. And it works. And so Cygnus is one of our tried and true deliverers of cargo to the station today. Everybody knows about SpaceX. This is the Dragon. Dragon is unique in that it is the only cargo vessel today that actually can go to space, deliver cargo, and then bring things back to Earth intact, land. It lands out in the ocean, so that's not optimal, but still, it gets stuff back to us. Then we have our old partners. Tom talked a little bit about them. The Russians, like it or not, that's the way we go to space today. We have an alternative, but Congress told us we couldn't use it, and that's the Chinese. So we don't use the other nation that gets people to space today, because NASA is the only agency of the federal government that is congressionally prohibited from working collaboratively with the Chinese on human spaceflight. So we're dependent on the Russians today to get our crews back and forth. And it's very reliable. The good thing is we work very well with Roscosmos, while I'm not sure that diplomatically and politically we do anything else well with the Russians, but that's okay. This is the HTV. It's the largest cargo vessel we have today. It's produced by the Japanese Space Agency, JAXA. It just went up to station a couple of weeks ago, and it delivered the new batteries that we're now putting on board. That was the mission. The spacewalk that was done today was the first in a number of different spacewalks to install lithium-ion batteries to replace the older batteries that we had. And the Japanese space cargo module is one of the best that we have, because it can carry outsized crew. You haven't seen this one yet, but if everything goes well, we hope they'll fly this year. It's called the Dream Chaser. It's a miniature shuttle. As a pilot, I love it because it's got wings, and it comes back and lands on a runway, and people fly it. So Tom and I we'd love to go fly this. It's initially going to be used as a cargo vessel. They have a contract with NASA now to provide cargo transportation to and from station. Interestingly, the company that owns it is a company called Sierra Nevada, not the beer, but Sierra Nevada, the rocket company out of Colorado. And they have a very interesting business model. They have entered into agreements with multiple nations around the world. Because of its size, it can fit into a C-5. And so they can launch it on a SpaceX Falcon 9, they can launch it on an Atlas V, they can launch it on a, you name it, and they can launch it on it, and then they can take it back and land it anywhere. And if there happens to be an outsized transport like an Antonov 124 or C-5, they can put it in it and bring it back to the Kennedy Space Center or Cape Canaveral, reprocess it, and get it ready to go fly again. This is a flying commercial vehicle that has already taken non-astronauts to space. It's Virgin Galactic's Spaceship Two. I'm not a betting person, but if I were, I would say if things go well, by the end of this year, by the end of 2019, you may very well see George Whitesides and Sir Richard Branson and the team at Virgin Galactic fly the first paying commercial customers. It'll be low Earth orbit. It'll be just a suborbital space flight, but nonetheless, it's into space and back. NASA uses them to do scientific experimentation suborbital, and I think this is the wave of things to come. This is the demonstration on the left. It's the SpaceX Crew Dragon, and this is an uncrewed version that went several months ago to the International Space Station. It docked itself, stayed there for several days. The crew went in to make sure it looked good and all that kind of stuff, and then it undocked, came back to Earth, landed intact, and now we've got it turning around, and we're going to fly a SpaceX Crew Dragon, hopefully next year, with a crew, and it'll be an all NASA crew because SpaceX doesn't have a cadre of astronauts. On the right is the artist concept of the Boeing CST-100. It's their version of a crew carrier. It still has a number of tests that it has to go through. It has to do the demonstration, the uncrewed demonstration that the SpaceX Dragon, Crew Dragon has already done, and then hopefully next year they'll fly. Big difference in the vehicles. Not a lot on the outside, but on the inside, it represents two dramatically different ways of thinking. SpaceX, very automated. Any of you drive a Tesla? You know, other than the steering wheel, which you really don't need, it doesn't look a lot like the inside of most other cars. The Crew Dragon doesn't look at all like the inside of a normal spaceship. It's all touchscreen. They would just assume the crew doesn't do a thing, but we told them, no, we don't do it that way. So make sure the crew can do something. You look inside the CST-100, it is a classic spacecraft. It looks, in fact, it looks like the inside of the cockpit of a Boeing 787 or a 777. And they take advantage of the Boeing legacy of building, you know, crewed places where people have to interact together. So dramatically different in the way that they built out the vehicles. I mentioned this, and I'll only show it to you. This is an artist's drawing because I don't have a picture of a Shenzhou on orbit. But Shenzhou is the smaller vehicle that's, I don't want to mess this up, so let's see. There you go. That's the crew module. That's like Soyuz. And in fact, there's always an ongoing battle between the Chinese and the Russians as to whether that's really a Soyuz that looks a little different. The Chinese say no, the Russians say yes. This is the deorbit module and sort of their power and propulsion module. And it's flown a number of times. They actually have had two modules fly to space, Tiangong 1 and Tiangong 2, that have been there for periods of time. The next time they fly, it'll be Tiangong 3, and it is the beginning of their space station. And they have, they're already working really hard to partner with other nations. They are not making any pretenses about it. They would like to take the customers away, the partners away that we have in the United States on the International Space Station today. And they're actually they're a little bit more adept at doing it, and they have no restrictions on who can fly with them. So it's a little bit easier for them to go out and market. And they're marketing really, really hard. So, you know, one of these days we'll fly with them. What we hope is that the docking adapter that they put on this, we hope complies with the international docking standards, because shortly after I became the NASA administrator, the president had me to go with a team of people over to China to meet with the Chinese Space Agency officials before we were prohibited from doing it. And we took a copy of the international docking standards that were in work at the time, left it with the Chinese, asked them to evaluate it and give us any feedback they had. To my knowledge, they never gave us any feedback, but we're hoping they do what they usually do and put it into their vehicles. Because if they did, it means that Shenzhou can dock with the International Space Station and we can dock other vehicles with it. So we're kind of keeping our fingers crossed that that's what happened. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but this shows you what's going on in space today that's paving the way for us to get to Mars and to get back to the moon and then on to Mars. We're doing in-space manufacturing. NASA's actually talking about advertising and branding, you know, sticking little decals on the side of a spacecraft, which makes my skin crawl, but I leave that to Admiral Ellis over there. You know, whatever works, works. Dr. Bobby Braun. Bobby, are you back there in the back? I just left. He was my first technology, associate administrator for technology development. Awesome guy, formerly from Georgia Tech. I think I can say it. I can. Just left UC Boulder, where he was the Dean of Engineering, and he's going to really his dream world, which is JPL, the Jet Propulsion Lab, where he actually started. He's a Mars guy. So I'm glad to see Bobby going back out there, because we need people who can get us on the surface, get people on the surface of Mars, and he's really good at it. And then the one thing that we cannot forget, education and outreach. I know almost all of you, if not all of you, have programs in education and outreach. If we don't do that, we're not going anywhere. because the people who are going to land on Mars and the people who are going to be the final say-so of yes, we're going, they're not sitting in this auditorium, okay? Trust me, they are not sitting in this auditorium. I hope to be watching on a TV, sort of like the little girl that was sitting, not in a rocking chair, but in a crib. But I hope to be watching on TV when my granddaughter or somebody else lands on Mars the first time. But we've got to get kids excited. And other nations of the world know this, and they call on us all the time. I spent last year traveling the world as an emissary of the State Department, talking about the U.S. and our space program and the fact that we really need partners and we really need collaboration. I'm excited about our partners in the UAE, the United Arab Emirates. They are scheduled to launch the Emirates Mars mission the end of next year to arrive in Martian orbit in 2021, if they can get there, and that's a big if because Mars is hard to get to, but it will arrive to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the founding of the UAE. And friends, you probably know this, the assistant or the deputy program manager for the Emirates Mars mission is the Minister of State for Advanced Science, Sarah Bint Amiri, who, if you can't guess it from the name, happens to be a woman. Her frustration is lack of diversity on her science team, because about 80% of her science team is women. Because the UAE doesn't have men who are trained as scientists. They were either business people or they were petroleum engineers. And now that the nations of the Middle East are trying to transition from oil economies to knowledge economies, many of them are finding out that the people who are probably going to take them there, much to their chagrin, are going to be the women in their population. So you have to understand, I have 3 granddaughters, 1 daughter, 1 wife. My daughter and wife are sitting up there, so I live in a woman's world. And I really believe in it. So if you don't, get with it. Now, here's where I'm gonna ask you to talk to Admiral Ellis after this is over, because the only thing I was supposed to do was tell you how we're gonna get to Mars. We gotta go to the moon first. I shouldn't have said that. We don't have to. Okay, I still hold. Dr. Pate Cornell, are you raising your hand? They said we couldn't ask questions. I'm not gonna violate the rule. You can get me afterwards, okay? That's Admiral Ellis's wife, who in her own, she's got her own world. And oh, by the way, I'll brag about their daughter, who is Arian Cornell, who is the voice of Blue Origin. So anytime you hear Blue Origin streaming and stuff like that, and somebody who really sounds like she knows what she's talking about, that's their daughter. She's my hero. And she was once the executive director or the president or the CEO of the Space Generation, what is the right name of it? Did I get it close? Advisory Group. Okay. Young people. If you're 35 years or older, you're out. Okay. But here's what we're doing now, and hopefully in the next few years, we're going to use this commercial capability that we've been really trying to build, that NASA has invested in. And it's a partnership. It's not either or. It's the government and the private sector. For those of you who've worked in NASA before, particularly Tom will tell you, I don't think NASA has a place where we build rockets, big rockets. Never have had a place where we build big rockets. You go to Downey, or you go to Palmdale, or you go somewhere else where some industry that knows how to build rockets builds big rockets. It's just that we used to tell them how to suck eggs. We used to say we want a big rocket that's green and it has this many switches and that. We don't do that anymore. We say we want a big rocket that can take 7 people to the moon safely and get them back. Questions? And they say, we'll get back to you. And then we work collaboratively. We use a process today that's called insight. In the safety world, the way that NASA used to do things was we exercised oversight. This is the way that DOD did it. We just hover over the contractor and we dictate everything that goes on. And so we as a result of that, you get credit for whatever comes out, good or bad, and that's where engineering change proposals come in, for those of you who've worked with those. We're not doing it that way anymore. So we say we want a big rocket that will take 7 people to the moon, bring them safely back to Earth, and here's some other general guidelines. But we're going to work with you. We're going to exercise insight. We're going to have people in the plant. You can ask if you've got some questions, but we're not going to tell you how to do it. It's worked very well with Cygnus. It's worked incredibly well with the SpaceX Dragon, and we think it'll work well with the Crew Dragon and CST-100. And so far, although it's taken way too much time, that's the way we're kind of getting Orion and the Space Launch System. However, we're more into the oversight role there, so I think that also contributes to why it's taken a little bit too much time. But those are the vehicles that we're going to use to get back to the moon. We're going to start out in lunar orbit on something called the Lunar Orbit Gateway. If those of you who are like me, who came into the space program when we were talking about the STS, the Space Transportation System, a 3-pronged system, a launch vehicle to get us into space routinely, an orbiting space station on which we could either do construction or we could do experiments or whatever it was, and then go on to orbit somewhere else, and then an orbital transfer vehicle or an orbital maneuvering vehicle. And we got the shuttle. And so now we're going back to the future. And so we're looking at a lunar orbit gateway, which is sort of like that platform, except this one's going to be in lunar orbit. You'll come from Earth, whether it's a commercial vehicle or a government vehicle, rendezvous and dock with the lunar orbit gateway. Crew will go aboard, depending on what they want to do. If they're going on to Mars, they'll get into a transfer vehicle and go to Mars. If they're going down to the lunar surface, they'll get into a lunar lander. It may be the Blue Moon built by Blue Origin, or it may be a NASA-contracted government vehicle that's going down, or it may be something that the Europeans or the Japanese or the Israelis or somebody else did. But it's going to be an international collaboration that's going to help us get down to the surface of the moon. A few more things we need to understand about the human body in an environment far away from Earth, and then we're off. We're heading to Mars with a destination, a date of hoping to get there in the 2030s. And I am one who happens to believe firmly that, you know, if we just stay focused, we're okay. We're in pretty good shape right now. Big thing is always money. No, it is not 10 million. It is not 20 million. It's a lot of money. And it's sort of like President Kennedy said at Rice University Stadium, it is imperative that we do this, and it's going to cost a lot of money. But we've got to stay focused, and we'll get there. And again, I will say, the big thing about it is it's, stop. Can you stop it for me? Okay, I'll back up one. I gotta explain it because it's an old video, and people get angry when I use old videos, but it's the one that I like because it was one we did when I was the NASA administrator. Things I've said that I want you to remember. We're using the other 51% of society that we didn't use before. We've got women heavily involved in everything that we're doing at leadership roles at the very top. That's the way it is in every other country. So everybody's pulling in the same direction. I think that's something we didn't have in the days of Apollo or the early days of shuttle. The other thing is incredible international collaboration, something that we did not have, did not even seek in the early days of shuttle and during Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo. And that's a humongous plus. So this is, you may see something that says EM1. EM1 used to be Exploration Mission 1. And I was averse to naming things, using names for stuff, but it's now called Artemis, the Moon Mars mission. So this is Artemis. And I only show you this because some of you who don't live around the space program, we've been building hardware for a long time now, building and testing. And so I just want you to see what's been going on over the last 10 years or so. And you can turn, if there's a volume guy up there, you can really crank it up. And you'll know where the CGI is. Some of the stuff, if you see a rocket launch, no, haven't done that yet. This is actually in Michoud outside of New Orleans. This is the Kennedy Space Center. It's the new mobile launcher platform and the launch pad tower. Main engines that we flew on shuttle but have been repurposed will be reused, being tested in Skinnis down on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Solid rocket boosters, 5-segment now instead of 4-segment. We finished testing them about 2 years ago. They're ready to go. Shroud that comes off the side of the service module and Orion once it gets into orbit. These are workers down at the Kennedy Space Center really putting the finishing touches on the first Orion spacecraft to fly. We tested Orion. We sent it about 3,600 miles away from Earth, and it came back and the mission was absolutely incredible in December of 2014. This footage you're about to see here, that's a pilot eye view out the window of Orion as it was re-entering Earth's atmosphere. I tell the kids all the time, that's what you want to see. You want to see the outside of your vehicle burning because it says the inside of your vehicle is okay. We went back to ablative material and we want to see it burn off. So I plead with you to get excited about your space program and Mars, because we're going whether you like it or not.